Hello, YouTube. I had in the comments from one of my subscribers, hi Chris, uh, he's got some trouble freeing up his cone for his back gear. He's got an old, a pretty large old gap bed South Bend, which I must admit I'm a little bit envious of. It looks like a pretty nice machine when he gets through with it, but anyhow, and he's got some interesting things going on over on his channel as well. So you might go check him out. He does pattern making and casting and the like. He did some really nice fabrication work also on a post drill, getting it back up in running order. Excuse me a little bit. I've been sick over the last couple days, so my voice ain't perfect, and I do have a bit of a headache, but to be honest, I'm quite bored of laying in bed and watching other people do stuff on YouTube, so I thought I'd come down and make this little short video to see if I can't help him out a little bit. So anyways, and I know you already know this, Chris, but for anybody else that might be watching, a lot of these older lathes, to engage and disengage the cone, as you see I've got it disengaged right now so it's spinning free, there's a little bolt inside here in your ball gear, and now that bolt slides like this. It doesn't slide in and out, or it doesn't go in and out like your typical plunger type would that you're more likely to be familiar with, you know, because almost all the other lathes used a plunger, or later machines used a plunger. But anyhow, you have to loosen that bolt with a wrench, and on the other end, on the back side of it, there's kind of like an elongated square nut, or a T-nut without the T in it, you know. And that just slides into a recess in the rim here of our cone pulley, sliding outwards, and that locks everything together. And you just go back in and, oh, see, popped it out. That's why the plunger is kind of a nicer way to do this, but I slide it up, get it hand tight, and then cinch it down with the wrench. So that locks it together. His trouble is actually getting it unlocked. So assuming that you've gone in and slid that in and tighten it back up. Also want to take a moment to mention that with this type of locking system for your back gear, it's really important that when you have it unlocked that you've gone back in and tightened that down with the wrench, because when you're running, the centrifugal force is going to have a tendency to want to throw that out, and it's going to want to drop into that little notch in your cone pulley and lock things up. So if you don't tighten that and you're running, and then all of a sudden you go bang, you know, because what's happened is that's worked its way over, you've locked your gear train up, and now you've possibly broke some teeth off of your back gear, or any other damage that might occur. If you're lucky, you maybe just threw the back gears out and you dodged a bullet. But that's something to be aware of, is to always keep that tightened in place so it's not moving about on you. Anyways, so that should be all you need to do to free it. Now, you say you've already done that, and then there's these two, and the belt's kind of covering that one, but there's a hole there and a hole there with set screws in them. Usually that's going to be stamped oil, but it was a light stamping, so sometimes it's worn off just by the belt, you know. On this one, there's no stamping that marks that, but you'll see those, and you'll also see them in the back here on your back gear shaft. Some of the smaller lathes only had one. The little South Bend over there only had one. My Atlas only has one. But you need to take those out and pump as much oil in there as it'll take. With my particular one, if I pump a lot of oil into one or the other, I do it under a bit of pressure. That's another reason I kind of like 3-in-1. Because the nozzle on the 3-in-1 bottle will just fit in there and make a pretty tight fit, and I can squeeze that and put the oil in under some pressure. And you'll actually see, depending on if you have both the screws out, you'll see oil start to come up the other oil hole from the one you're pumping into, so you know you've got that filled with oil. As I've said before, a lot of times the reasons things on old machines aren't moving, even in a lot of cases with the ones that have been sitting outside for years, is not necessarily because of rust. It's because you get the oil that's in there dries up. It kind of creates a bit of a seal, which is nice. I've taken apart really rusty machines that have actually been pretty clean inside because of that dried up old layer of oil and grease. But they still were all stuck together, and you know, took some coaxing to get apart. But anyhow, getting some fresh oil in there should start helping to dissolve that. This may even be an application where it's alright to go ahead and use the dreaded WD-40 or some other type of very thin penetrant, just to get in there, kind of melt that old lacquer that's been created, and that ought to free it up. Sometimes all it takes is a little bit of time. So you say you've done that, I'd say just let it sit for a couple of days. Maybe come up to it once in a while and try and kind of work it loose, you know. And I'm pretty confident that will break it free. Now, you know, if you've tried this for a little while and that's not working out so good, well, you know, you're kind of doing a restoration anyway, so I'm assuming you're going to pull the spindle. It's time to go ahead and just take the bearing caps off and pull the whole assembly out, and then start trying to pull it apart that way. Get a puller on the spindle gear here and pull that off, and you know, and take your on these old South bends, you have a gear in the back here that's pressed on, and that's the only thing holding it on. It's a press fit and it's keyed, right? You have this thrust collar, or this take-up nut here, which is split. See if I can turn that around. I don't know if you can see that. You can't see that. I'll pull the camera off its mount. Okay, so yeah, that's split. So you loosen that screw and that unscrews. But see, you don't really have room to unscrew it over this way because that gear's in the way. You can kind of use this with a spanner to sort of jack that gear off, but it'll only work so far. But it should work enough to where you can get in there with a puller. But actually, I remember when I took this apart, what I had to do was I pulled the whole spindle out, and that got this bronze out of the way, and I actually screwed that collar in, and that gave me enough room to get into the puller and pull this gear off. Now, that collar, that gear, and of course the key, I'm not sure if I think it's a smaller diameter here, so I don't think the key will get in the way. But anyways, and the bronze is the only thing that's really holding this in place, you know. Once that collar and that gear's off, you're going to have a thrust bearing and maybe a couple of washers or something back here. Those will just slide off, and then in a perfect world, the cone pulley will just slide off. The bull gear is keyed to the shaft, to the spindle, so, and that's a press fit, and that will actually have to come off this way because it can't come off this way because you got a larger diameter here for your front spindle bearing, and you've got the shoulder and everything for the spindle nose, so everything's got to come off that way. Anyhow, yeah, at that point you're just basically going to be using, you know, all the traditional methods that we use to get this old stuff apart. Hit it with a little gentle heat maybe, And sometimes that'll help a lot because it'll kind of melt that old oil and dried grease a little bit, and it'll also cause, assuming you've put already penetrating oil and stuff in, it'll also cause hopefully some kind of capillary action that will sort of draw that into places it's not getting into. Heating things to get them apart isn't always just about expanding one piece of metal to get another piece of metal out of it. There are sometimes other factors like that come into play. It's been my experience mostly that taking apart even a rusty hulk of shit, the old oil will have gotten into those small spaces and will dried up and kind of created a protective barrier, which will still stick things together, but you just get a little gentle heat on it and it'll kind of melt that, and all of a sudden things start coming apart great. And the same thing with the old, good old liquid wrench style. Anyhow, so yeah, I hope this little video will help you solve that minor issue. Worst case scenario, somebody was running it and ran it dry and the thing got seized up, in which case that might make it a little bit more of a hassle to get apart. You might have to get it in a hydraulic press or something at that point to really get some force on it. But yeah, that's all I can think of right now that'll to do to get that going. And I'm confident that you'll get it going without too much trouble. The machine didn't really look to be in too terrible a shape from what I saw, and looking forward to seeing it up and running again. So thanks for watching, and like I said, I hope this helped you, and hopefully whoever else sees this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and have a wonderful day. I was just reviewing the video, and I had another thought about this. There's one other thing that you might try as far as the heat goes is get a small, space heater and go ahead and aim that on your headstock area and just let that sit there and warm the thing up for a few hours. Because it's been pretty cold lately. In Europe, kind of far, a bit farther north than I am, so by the way, I hope you're weathering that storm that's gone through. That's apparently caused a lot of damage and stuff, so hope you're doing okay there. But anyhow, yeah, that would be a good way to gently heat that up and hopefully kind of get some of that old oil and stuff a little more viscous and a little bit more, get things flowing a little bit better. Anyhow, yeah, that's about it. Just kind of a little closing thought on this. And if anybody else is interested, go check out Chris Anderson, the apprentice machinist. He's the one that I did this video primarily for. I think I've said before, he's got some interesting stuff going on. Did a nice little job on a post drill, and fabbing up and kind of reverse engineering the parts for it. He's been doing some pattern making and other things of interest. So anyhow, thanks again for watching, and have a wonderful day.